naturally. To think that only yesterday I was cheerful, bright and gay, looking forward to who wouldn't do the role I was about to play. And as if to knock me down, reality came around, and without so much as a mere touch, cut me into little pieces, leaving me to doubt. Talk about God in his mercy, who, if he really does exist, then why did he desert me in my hour of need? I truly am indeed alone again, naturally. It seems to me that there are more hearts broken in the world that can't be mended, left unattended. What do we do? It seems to me that...
You are listening to This Week in Clown World with Ben and Hobbs, so sit back, relax, take your black pill, and enjoy the show.
Well, howdy doody, fellow harmful domestic extremists. It is once again time for This Week in Clown World with Ben and Hobbs. I'm Hobbs, he's Ben. You're in Clown World!
We are.
Welcome you.
We are this week. Definitely Clown World.
Oh, yeah, there's a lot to get going to today. So why don't you just kick us off with the first thing you had on your mind, Ben?
Well, I mean, it's always on my mind, boobs. So let's talk about the boobs at the White House. Literally,
yeah, let's do that.
Boobs at the White House.
And figuratively.
Figuratively, inside and outside, just boobs everywhere at the White House now.
Right. Yes. So we're, of course, talking about the horribly oppressed, downtrodden, nigh on genocided minority who has their occupation flag flown in a place of prominence on the White House and gets invited to a picnic on the White House lawn. Just the picture of oppression.
I'm surprised they're able to find that many with the mass genocide that's going on of them.
I know, well, they have to be really careful because, much in the same way that we accuse everybody of being a Fed in our movement, I'm sure that they saw an open invitation to a White House picnic in the Rose Garden and said, well, this is deeply suspicious. What if they're trying to round me up and put me in one of those genocide camps that the news keeps telling me is just around the corner any second now?
I thought maybe it was like, how around Thanksgiving during the turkey genocide, the president pardoned some turkeys on the White House lawn. I thought he was pardoning some trans people from genocide on the White House lawn.
Yeah, you're on to something.
Or
there.
It could just be the whole country's gay now. I don't.
Yes, I saw a meme the other day on the internet that said the United States spent 60 years fighting the Soviet Union just to become a gay, retarded version of it, and that's not wrong.
Um, so I'm sure everybody is aware of what happened. Trans activists were at. Could I put this up, a picture of that up, without getting in trouble? You think, or
It's one of those morally gray areas because is it a man's boobs?
that's
Is it a woman's
all right.
boobs?
Well, I think you make a good point, so I'll just share it here. So they had they had a LGBTQIA whatever party at the White House, and here I'll just throw it up here. I mean, so technically, here I'll solo it real quick here. Technically, one of these is a woman showing her tits in front of the White House,
Mm-hmm.
and one is just a guy with his tits out. um, but you know what? I love boobs. Anytime I could view them, I'd probably will. But not at the White House. I mean, there's got to be some sort of decorum. I don't care if it's a hot ass supermodel up there taking her boobs out. I'd be like, that's not called for.
Yeah, this isn't Bourbon Street.
Yeah, it's not.
It's
There's a time and a place, and the White House is not the place to get your boobs out.
especially when the guy who invited you has a well documented history of feeling people up at inappropriate times.
Well, the funny thing was, when people were getting mad about the man with tits getting his boobs out, their response was, "So I am a woman then." That's not what people were mad about. I think they're mad just about people taking off their
Mhm.
shirts and dancing around in front of the White House. How does that look on? How
Yeah,
does that look on the world stage?
it can't look good. And the thing is that like the picture that you just threw up there was also, I'm assuming, a female to male transgender person with their shirt off as
Mhm.
well. Um, if it was just a bunch of biological men taking their shirts off and dancing around, it would still be inappropriate. The
But
White House is one of those places where you wear your suit, your tie, your polo shirt
right.
at the very least,
Yeah,
right?
good point. I
It's
mean,
a,
if it's just a bunch of dudes up there taking their shirts off in front of the White House and flexing and clowning, it would be just as inappropriate.
right. In today's age of digital media. Now, I don't want to sound too hypocritical, but the founding fathers back in the day threw some ragers of parties. I don't know if you ever saw the alcohol list of George Washington's going away party, but it was like 15 people put enough booze away to kill a platoon of United States Marines. I mean, it was
Ben
unreal.
Franklin would give several women syphilis at the parties.
Yeah, they threw some ragers, but they also didn't have a smartphone with a high def digital camera in every pocket either.
Right. So,
Yeah.
and that didn't do anything good for their cause. It was
No, and those people were banned from the White House.
for life, I guess. Will never be invited
Yep.
back, but I'm sure they don't care. They don't. They seem like they didn't understand the gravity of the situation or care what they did.
Or, much in the same way that one hoists the flag over the important buildings of a conquered enemy, this was just another part of the
The gay empire.
conquest. Yeah, the conquest ritual that's going on in our country right now.
I mean, yeah, you put that flag in the middle where nobody's supposed to be, right?
Hmm.
Then you dance on the lawn with your tits out. Hey, we won. I mean,
Hmm.
what if during the January 6th thing they'd put the Boogaloo flag front and center there? How do you think that would have gone
Oh,
over?
that would have been a sure sign of an insurrection or
Yeah,
conquest.
exactly. So,
Yeah.
congratulations, the LGBTQ mafia. I guess you won at this point.
Well, if all they conquer is Washington D.C., then you can have it.
Right?
Washington D.C. and California. Everything else, leave me alone. Be yourself, by yourself. Stay away from me.
Yeah, and you know that it's getting so bad that at this point, if some foreign power decided to wipe out DC, would anybody care?
Probably
I
not.
mean, we'd be bummed at the loss of history, but
Yeah.
other than that, who's going to care?
Yeah. And in all seriousness, I've been seeing a lot of people who are kind of black pilled on the topic, talking about how dismal our recruiting numbers are for the military and everything. And you really do have to ask yourself, at this point, if we got into a situation where, God forbid, they had to reinstate the draft because things were so bad, what are you going to tell these draftees that they're fighting for? Butt sex in Uganda,
Yeah.
a foreign policy that prioritizes literally everybody else in the world over you, that's picking your pocket in order to subsidize the lifestyles of people halfway around the world, in order to spend $800,000 on a missile to be fired by a guy who makes $20,000 in a year at a guy who will never make $20,000 in his entire life.
Right.
That's what you're fighting for. It's like, no, you would have mass defection, you'd have secession, you'd have, I mean, whatever enemy that we would be fighting that would get us to that point, the people that they would say to go out there and kill them all would be like, no, I'm going to give them the keys to the city. You made this bed, now you're going to sleep in it.
Yeah, I mean,
Right?
it's
And I wouldn't blame
as
them.
unpopular as the draft was in Vietnam. I mean, some of those people still were behind it when they would get drafted because they're fighting the commies.
Mm-hmm.
I mean,
Exactly.
what you make a point. What entity would unite people to fight against at this point, and that they'd be
There's
willing to
nothing.
defend?
Yeah, that's the thing. It's like, if we had something worth fighting for, then the American people would rally behind Old Glory and charge straight to the gates of hell.
I doubt it. I mean, Old Glory's racist.
Yeah, but like I said, if we had something worth fighting for.
What possibly could, maybe this is the whole aliens narrative. They're gonna start pushing that we're gonna be attacked by aliens. So we gotta unite the country.
We got to unite the world. We're fighting for humanity. It's like, the last 10 years or so have taught me that humanity kind of sucks. We kind of have this one coming.
Maybe the Independence Day scene where it blows up the White House. There you go. United the country and Independence Day. The aliens blow up the White House. And cheering erupts across the
Yeah. Oh, thank God we don't have to deal with those people anymore.
So we got boobs outside the White House, right? What's new with boobs inside the White House?
Well, Biden was giving a speech in which he was talking about how he lifted a ban on transgesters in the military. Yeah,
I didn't know transgenders were banned from the military.
Well, there was it was kind of one of those gray areas once Don't Ask, Don't Tell went away. I think that was kind of the final frontier that they had to go to, because we've talked about it here several times.
Okay. They're saying that. I see what they're okay.
Yeah, you can't be somebody who's trans in the military without having a massive logistical chain that needs to follow you around. Right, the surgeries, the upkeep, and everything.
So they're saying transition. So transitioned military members are allowed now.
That's what I'm thinking. That's what it sounded like. I mean, could just.
How'd you like to be? I mean, it's communal showers. You see shit. How'd you like to? I mean, that first transgender female to male that walks in with that butchered hog. I mean,
well, I don't think that one of those would be able to complete a PT test at the male standard.
Oof.
That's why gendered PT test standards exist. because if you ask,
It's a
even
glass
a
ceiling. We
17-year
need equity now on the PT test standard
yeah.
for female to male transgender.
Yeah, which is they're going to a gender neutral, the ACFT or whatever it AFCT. The new one is supposed to be gender neutral, or at least as neutral as you can get. It's supposed to be divvied up by MOS. Like if you're an infantryman, it's supposed to be harder than if you're like a cook or something. Like this is a disaster.
And they're all paid the same.
Yeah.
How would you like to be an
ridiculous.
infantryman dealing with that shit? I mean, it already sucks for, the types that are frontline with all the pogues that, get paid the same. And now they're going to have different
Yeah.
standards. I mean, they're going to come back. You're going to have a bunch of fat pogues while they're out
Yeah.
in the field.
Yeah, and then you also have to take into account the MOSs who might be attached to a line unit and might not be attached to a line unit, like a combat medic.
Mhm.
Are they going to have to be tested to the infantryman standard, even if they're like battalion level, back at the rear? Like I was in my support company. We had a medical company in our battalion, our support battalion. Are they going to be tested to the infantry standard while the mechanics are tested? I mean, this whole thing, they're making it way more complicated than it needed to be. I hated the Army's PT test when I was in, because running 2 miles seems like an absolute waste of my time. But at least it was across the board.
Right.
Gets a little bit easier as you get older.
Well, I hated it too. I never understood the sit-ups thing. Why? Where in combat is it going to matter how many sit-ups I can do?
Yeah. There's a rationale behind all of them, but it just seems like it seemed to me that running some sprints would have been
Carrying a
more
load of heavy
conducive
shit
to,
for so many meters.
yeah, that 2 mile run was that's excessive.
If you're doing the 2 mile run, things have gone to shit.
I'd rather take my chances in a firefight than run 2 miles.
If you're doing the
Thank you
2
very
mile
much.
run, you're probably in the Ukraine or something like that.
Oof.
Which, the amount of territory, a little bit of a segue, but the amount of territory the Russians lost, I mean, they're only having to do what, about 100-yard run?
Yeah.
I saw
Yeah,
a map. It was like it was on some website called War Maps, and they keep it updated. They use satellite footage. It's an independent source, and it updated the gains that Ukraine had made before and after. And I'm like, well, these look the same. And they had it color coded. You had to zoom way in, and you could see a couple little purple areas where Ukraine had pushed Russia back half a mile.
Temporarily.
Yeah, half a mile and maybe several spots. That's what our money got us, is a half a mile over.
Yeah, all of our money and half the armor in Europe.
Got us half a mile.
Got a few hundred yards. It's back to World War I standards all over again, where you throw an entire brigade combat team to gain a trench line.
What a waste!
Is it worth it?
The loss of lives, it's hard to guess what it's at, because Ukraine puts out one number, Russia puts out another, and I suppose you nail it in the middle. The amount of people lost, it's World War I all over again. You're right.
Yeah, I don't want to make light of it. I'm sitting here joking about the paltry gains on either side, but Jesus, man, they need to hash this out, because there's not going to be any more people, any more materiel, any more ammunition, anything left. They're going to be down there with clubs and sharpened shovels, just like in World War I, all over again. What's old is new, right?
Yeah. And did you see the footage of the Russian soldier that gave up to the drone? Did you see that one?
No, I didn't.
Drone flying overhead. The guy starts waving a white flag, and he's like motioning to him that, like showing he has no gun. And he's like, don't drop anything on me. So the drone is like signaling a direction for the guy to run to give up to the Ukrainian lines. you know, and it followed him and guided him over. You know, it's the soldiers aren't into it anymore, I don't think.
On
Yeah.
either side.
It's just such a terrible.
Yeah.
There's still no light at the end of the tunnel either.
No, it's an absolute waste. You got some true believers, and you've got some people that are just in the middle of a
I mean,
shitty
Ukraine's got to
situation.
run out of people at some point.
Mhm.
And maybe that's what'll happen now, that they'll peter themselves out on this offensive, and Russia will just, you know, finish. I mean, how would they even finish Ukraine off at this point? It seems like they're just not willing to give up at all.
At this point, I think that there's shit. Well, like Alex said the last time that we talked to him, or maybe it was just the last time I talked to him on the phone. I don't know. I talk to Alex every once in a while, and you know, his one of his big predictions was that Ukraine as a nation as we know it right now is not going to exist after the end of this. That Romania is going to slice off a big chunk. Poland is going to slice off a big chunk. Russia is going to slice off a big chunk. And then like right there in the middle around Kiev is going to be like maybe a DMZ or a semi-autonomous zone, in the same way that Kurdistan.
Well, it's almost pushed back to the old Polish-Lithuanian Empire lines from what Russia has taken.
Yeah. And that's what Alex was saying. He's saying that the area that constitutes what we know of as the nation of Ukraine right now, because Ukraine, or the Ukraine as we used to call it, it just means the border area. It's this sort of like shifting gray zone, or it used to be this like shifting gray zone until the dissolution of the Soviet Union, and they made it into its own country because they wanted another nation that was allied with them in the United Nations. They wanted was it? I don't think it wasn't Yeltsin. It was Gorbachev. Gorbachev was originally from that area, and he wanted his area to have some semblance of independence.
No.
So
Khrushchev, wasn't it? Wasn't it Khrushchev?
Or yeah. Khrushchev, yes. Khrushchev, you're right. Yeah, Khrushchev was from that area. And he's the same. He's the reason that the Crimean Peninsula belongs technically to Ukraine, but is leased to Russia. You know, so a lot of this goes back to him, and it's just a really odd mishmash of internal politics. And what's going on over there right now is basically another upswing in a 1,200-year-old Slavic civil war that seems a lot worse, because in the modern age, we can't look more than 15 minutes in the past to take context for anything, you know.
Right.
People will say, oh, this started last February when Putin invaded for no reason at all because he's evil. And then other people will be like, no, this started in 2014 when Zelensky came to power and started bombing the Donbass for no reason at all. And it's like, y'all are about 100 years bare minimum too late to figure this one out.
Yeah. I don't know, you know, and all the involvement by the Bidens over there, I don't know why it seems like Democrats like to be their own personal warlords in a country at this point, or you know, their own personal behind the scene dictators. Like we talked about, I'll segue into this one. We talked about the Clintons in Haiti. And now that's
yeah, get into that one.
That's kind of circled back around again. Let me just share something up here. So this was made popular again. Just somebody who you wouldn't even. He's like a hip hop mogul type. You know, he's a producer. Let me share this up. Yeah,
Dom Luker. Yeah, he's been on InfoWars a couple of times. I know the name. I followed him on Twitter like as soon as I started the Twitter account.
He's Haitian, I guess. Is that what you gathered?
I didn't get to read through the entire thread, but if you did, why don't you just go ahead?
Yeah, it sounds like his interest was that he was Haitian, and here he posted. I'm not sure what this clip, who these guys were, so I didn't put too much weight behind it. But then he started sharing other stuff like this one here. State Department calls for Clinton interview and Haiti case back in 2010. And what happened here was a bunch of Clinton staffers were caught smuggling, and he says right here, attempting to smuggle 33 children out of Haiti. Not even orphans. And, the people that, bunch of white women for some reason, the people that were caught were like, oh, it was all just a big misunderstanding. And Hillary intervened and got him off the hook on it. Then here he shares another email from an NGO, just really weird about, let's see if it'll let me zoom in here. It will not let me zoom in. Oh, there it goes. Just talking about, go to this guy and read all this, talking about how they need to get they need to fill quotas on children, getting them out of Haiti. It's like, what are they doing with all these damn kids? I said, I wonder if any of these kids that were trafficked out are even alive. So here it is. Upon assuming a prominent role in Haiti, Clinton reportedly intervened to secure the release of Laura Silsby. That was that white lady who was trying to get 33 kids out of Haiti. So Hillary intervened and got her off the hook. Here it comes out she's a convicted pedophile, changed her name, and now she works for AlertSense, a company that issues Amber Alerts. It's like, what? Right here. Organ harvesting is a lucrative business he gets into. I mean, the Clintons have just taken Haiti, and here's a creepy one. 1998, George Soros in Haiti looking for investments. Clinton's, they've been involved with recovery, finding all sorts of money, and then he gets into how it was money laundering. You guys got to read this. 10%, they raised $30 million for Haiti. Foundation's taxes said 10% of it was spent. Only $3 million of it spent on Haiti, and they used the rest for paying wages to people, whatever they want to do with it. Just on and on. They just keep laundering out of Haiti. And Haitian Americans know what's going on. He talks about in it how people from Haiti have no love for the Clintons at all and realize that they've ruined the country. And none of them.
Right. And they just keep getting involved though, because in a way the Haitians can't really afford to turn away that kind
Well, the thing
of
is,
help.
they're not really. It seems like they're not even really getting help. Like that thing said, they raised $30 million, and $3 million of it went to be spent in Haiti, and the rest of it was spent on operating expenses. The amounts that he's throwing out here, we're getting up into the billions. Here, just look at what Clintons were spending on. They used Haitian relief funds to pay for Chelsea Clinton's wedding. Ghislaine Maxwell and Jeffrey Epstein were a guest. So yeah, go figure. Jeffrey Epstein works into this story too. Smuggling Haitian children, and Jeffrey Epstein name keeps popping up.
Yeah, really funny how that keeps on happening.
It's just it just pisses you off a little bit. Here's a big story. You got emails. You got this guy lays out a perfect roadmap, excellent sources. Nothing in the mainstream media about it. The only actual reporting on it was I skipped over at the top because I didn't have a chance to check in that Next News Network. You said he's called into InfoWars, though. I guess I didn't catch those.
Yeah, he's been a guest. It's been like a year or two since the last time he's on there. He's the last time I heard him on, he was on the morning show with Harrison Smith. And yeah, since that's where I first heard the name. And when I started the Twitter account a few weeks ago, I saw the name pop up in people you should follow. And I was like, okay, yeah, definitely. I remember this guy's name. And in the 3 or 4 weeks that I've had the Twitter account, every once in a while he'll pop up in the feed, and it's always something like, dear such and such famous person, you have been selected to be exposed. And this is what he does, is he has these long threads with impeccably sourced material that he lays out a roadmap. It'll be like, somebody in Hollywood, or somebody in the music business, or some famous politician, or some famous sports star from overseas, like a soccer player or an F1 driver. This is just what this Dom Luker guy does. And if you have Twitter, he is an amazing follow if you like these deep dives. And I
I mean,
I would love to
I
talk
wonder
to
if
the
that's
guy
a
personally.
possibility. We should maybe reach out to that guy.
I can try and DM him, but there's no guaranteeing that he'll see
Yeah.
it. I'm sure he gets a
And,
million DMs a day.
that kind of ties the reason she hasn't been convicted. I don't know if you saw episode 3 of Tucker Carlson talking about, and boy, I'm nailing the segues, on Trump and why he was convicted, indicted. Did you see episode 3 of Tucker? Because he called out
I did.
the military industrial complex, and he laid it out. I mean,
Absolutely.
that's probably why Trump is in there. He said they lied. He fought them when he was in office, so now this is how they're going to take him out, I guess. And I thought it
Sure
was
seems
interesting
that
that
way.
the National Archives worked with every president since Jimmy Carter to clear up their classified documents. They never helped Trump out, though.
Yeah, and they remember when they went down to the Mar-a-Lago thing, the National Archives inspected the facilities, and they're like, okay, this is good, but these things need to be in a locked room, and these are the list of
Meanwhile,
approved
every other
locks that we would
president,
like
the
on the
National
door.
Archive hooked them
And
up with a warehouse space where they could put their stuff until they cleared it. But they told Trump, "Oh no,
Mm-hmm.
yeah, take it."
Yeah, take it. And then when they inspected it, they told him how to secure it, and they worked with the Secret Service in order to get it up to their standards. And then
Yeah.
2 or 3 weeks later, the FBI
well
raided it
played.
and broke down the lock. Yeah, that's fucking
and I thought it was
slimy.
interesting when I heard all that happened, because they tried to do something similar to me when I was first on city council. So there's a bid process, and until a bid is open, they're supposed to remain secret, right? So they had sent me a bid and asked for my input on it. I didn't know that it was still closed. I had some questions on it, so I called down to the city office. I was like, well, what's this about? And they're like, well, call the contractor and clear it up with them. So I called the contractor, asked a question, and he says, oh, this hasn't been open yet. Why are you asking me about that? It's not supposed to be open until next week. It's like, well played, fucking setup. So, they got the lawyer involved and said, Ben's talking about closed bids to contractors. And I said, well, fuck off. I'm not going to talk to anybody here. And it just went away. But it's crazy how the state, you can set people up at the low level, or you can set people up at the high level by acting like, everything's okay and then knowing what's wrong. And that's part, I know they say the first 2 rules of politics are show up and know the rules. Trump, how could you know all the rules involved with being president?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. And everybody's against you.
On your first go. Ever.
What was the comment over here? He was 100% wrong on video claiming to be organ harvesting of a child. I had to dig around, but I was correct that he gave false context on the video. Oh, must have been a Don Lucre. Maybe it's that video that I didn't play because I didn't know what the guy was about. Yeah.
The next news network.
But yeah, this could really be something that sticks to Trump. I mean, they set him up and they nailed him.
It's so slimy and it's so transparent that that's what they did, and you've still got people that can't see it.
Mm-hmm.
That's the part that's so frustrating to me. And it's got to be super frustrating to the people who are actual mega fans of Trump. Actually, you know what? That reminds me. Remember John Rourke, that friend of mine from the Army that we had that one night on a few weeks back? He
Great.
started his own podcast. He's got 3 episodes in right now. It's the John Rourke Show on Rumble. You can go check it out. And he was talking the other night about the security at Mar-a-Lago. They're accusing Trump not of violation of the Presidential Records Act. They're accusing him of the Espionage Act. And it's the most loosey-goosey interpretation of the Espionage Act because it's like, oh, he had classified documents unsecured and anybody could have just taken a look at them. And John Rourke, my friend from the Army, he hangs out at Mar-a-Lago every once in a while. He gets invited over there. And he's like, Mar-a-Lago is one of the most secure sites in the country right now because you have this ex-president who is severely hated by a sizable portion of the country. Not only do they have Secret Service agents all over Mar-a-Lago, but they've also got private security because Donald Trump can afford to have a private security. It says there's a perimeter fence. Before you even get anywhere on the ground, you have to be pre-approved by the Secret Service. You get your vehicle searched at the gate. You get wanded and patted down at the gate. And then when you get up to the building, you get another security check. You get another pat down. You get another wand. It's like,
if he wins again, he should just run the
not,
country from Mar-a-Lago. There's nothing that says you have to do it from the White House.
No, absolutely not. And yeah, I wouldn't bat an eye at it. He can step out on his yard and go golfing.
If I was him, I would not go back to the White House. I would do it from Mar-a-Lago.
There's a bit of advice for the president. So I know Donald Trump is a fan of Roads to Liberty.
We'll see how he turns out. I think it's going to stick. I think they've been setting this up. I mean, they had to be waiting for the right time to decide when to spring it. And apparently they decide now is right. And I mean, they know the rules. They knew he didn't know the rules. Set him up. There he goes. And the Republicans aren't going to stand up for him. They want to see him gone too. They're the old uniparty, the war party.
Mm-hmm.
That's what runs the country.
Yeah. To say that it's just, when Trump decided to become a Republican is when they decide, no. And Tucker nailed it. When he went after the intelligence community and the military industrial complexes, when he painted a bullseye on his back.
I'm just a little disappointed when you hear about how the people were kissing Trump's ass and he kind of bought into it and let him into his inner circle, like Mike Pompeo. He let his ego get the better of him and listen to those people. That was pretty disappointing. I don't know. I assume if he gets there, and again we've talked about, he's just got a clean house.
Yep. And hopefully he's learned his lesson not to let those types of sycophants into his inner circle, no matter how much he may enjoy the flattery of it. I think that comes from a place of, a place of ego. He's larger than life, and he knows that he's larger than life. But also, I think it kind of comes from a place of insecurity as well. He's got all of this money and all of this power and everything, but I think deep down inside, for whatever reason, he might be insecure about one thing or the other. And when people just kiss his ass like it's going out of style, it just gives him an ego stroke that he can't resist. What he needs is somebody like a Rand Paul to be that voice behind his ear. What was the name of the guy that Julius Caesar had follow him around everywhere? That when he got his ego inflated by the cheering of the crowds, it was this guy followed him around everywhere, and it was his only job was lean forward and whisper in Caesar's ear, "You are only a man," to kind of bring Caesar back down to earth. That was that guy's sole job, was just to remind Caesar, you are not a god, you are just a man. I think that would be the
Well, it seemed like he attacked anybody that did that Trump for some reason. Hopefully he learned his lesson.
Mm-hmm.
Can't teach an old dog new tricks, but hopefully he's figured that one out. Yeah, I see we got Simon waiting. I got one more thing you want to hit on, and we'll have Simon drop in here. You know, we talked about this guy was 2 or 3 weeks ago. I said how popular old Uncle Ted's been getting. I mean, people have been writing to him. He'd been responding to their letters. You know, the younger generation was reading the works of Ted Kaczynski and being like, looks like he was right about a lot of things. And suicide happens. It's like, what?
Mm-hmm.
I mean, tinfoil hat. I mean, you said he's 81, but it just seems weird that, you know, for how long has nobody talked about Ted Kaczynski? And he starts to get in the public mind again and decides to suicide himself. Yeah.
Cancer, and stomach cancer is one of those cancers where it's like it'll kill you really slowly and really painfully. So I imagine that maybe he just had enough and decided that now is, I'm back in the public zeitgeist. People are already reading my stuff. Suicide in a jail cell is going to just kind of put it over the edge, and everybody's going to be talking about it. And maybe something will be done because the Industrial Revolution has had dire consequences for mankind. Or whatever the catch line is.
Yeah, I don't know how much
from his manifesto
Ted was able to see the outside world, but he had to have been extremely disappointed to see what had happened after he warned about so much of it.
Mm-hmm. I told you. So, rest in peace, Ted Kaczynski. You were a genius well before your time. Can't agree with your methods, but your message was pretty much.
So that was all our topics. Simon was going to stop by here. Let me bring him up. I'll throw this up here. Let's see. Adding him in here in 3, 2, 1. Simon, you there?
Yes. Can you guys hear me okay?
Yes.
Excellent. It's a pleasure to be with you once again. Thank you so much.
Huh?
No problem, man.
So,
next 15 minutes are yours. Go, my friend.
I'm sure you're all aware that before I start into this, just let me impart something that you may find entertaining. So Mar-a-Lago was actually intended to be the Southern White House. And that was why Trump bought it. Because when it came on the market, he said, we cannot let this opportunity go. So that was specifically why he bought it. So if he did use that as the White House, it would be as it was intended. And
I did not know that.
The thing about the person following Julius Caesar, it was actually a slave that would ride on the chariot in any procession of triumph, and he would hold the laurels of victory over the general or the Caesar's head. And whilst all the crowd would cheer and he'd have all the slaves and all the weapons on the carts dragged before him, then that's why the slave would say, remember, you're only a man, because you could be overwhelmed by the adulation of the crowds. So anyway, those are little 2 points aside. So big news. We're getting it here first. So the call's for excitement. RFK Jr. So had you seen that he's just done this massive interview with Rogan?
No.
I saw something pop up in my feed, but I didn't get a chance to actually watch it yet.
So it looks like he recorded something yesterday. It went on air this afternoon. It's 3 hours and 5 minutes. So it makes me look really concise. And frankly, unless you're really interested in the history of vaccine development, you can jump forward to 2 hours and 55 minutes. Okay. Because the real important stuff is the last 9.5 minutes. Now, what many people haven't noticed is he put out an announcement, or rather his team did, on his campaign website and on the Twitter feed that linked to it but didn't really explain it. And we'll try and jump over here, and I'll read it. It's just like one paragraph, hopefully. Can you? Do we still have audio?
Yes.
Great. Okay. So
Yes.
Oh, now we don't have audio.
it's okay. Here I am.
There you
I
are.
think we lost
All
you.
right, okay, so I'm just going to do it from memory. So the first thing that it said was in commemoration of his uncle John F. Kennedy's famous 1963 peace speech, that he's going to deliver a definitive foreign policy speech in New Hampshire on June the 20th. The theme of the speech will be peace through diplomacy. And it will define a new conception of American leadership in the coming multipolar era. Okay, so the multipolar era is the current joint Russian and Chinese foreign policy. So it literally looked like he'd lifted that sentence out of some of their documents. Okay, so this was a huge shift.
Mm-hmm.
Now, I went back today and rewatched that speech that they are referring to. It's the 10th of June, 1963 at American University. It's only 28 minutes long. It's an excellent speech. Okay. Now, after he had finished with Rogan, his team put out another reminder about this speech that he's got coming up. And it's like 7 p.m. on Tuesday, the 20th of June. Okay. So once again, they said, quote, marking the anniversary of President John F. Kennedy's speech at American University, Mr. Kennedy will announce a fundamentally new direction for American foreign policy. With his election in 2024, our countries, and this is the real kisser, this bit here, right? With his election in 2024, our country's decades-long journey into military imperialism will be over. We will instead become the exemplar of peace, freedom, and democracy that once inspired the world.
That guy's going to get Kennedy'd for sure after that statement.
Okay, so Rogan said to him right at the very end, right? Do you feel concerned for your safety? Okay, and he said, now I can't go into crowds, I can't walk down the street on my own, I can't just go into a restaurant and shake hands with people. There's lots of things he's saying that he can't do, and he's taking precautions because he's concerned not about the Iranians or the North Koreans, but about the deep state. Okay, now it's important to remember that in that speech, many people think that it's simply about because it's called the peace speech. They think that Kennedy was talking about the open air nuclear test ban that he announced during that speech, and also that he was calling for a conference with Khrushchev and Macmillan to broach the subject of nuclear disarmament. But what he was also talking about it was that Pax Americana could not be enforced throughout the world through use of force and American arms. Okay. And he also specifically references Eisenhower's 1960 departure speech referencing the military industrial complex. Yet he mentions that in his speech. Okay. Now, the other thing that's really critical is he talks about the idea that we can achieve peace without agreeing on every issue. And while we enjoy the fruits of peace, then we can negotiate and work out all the kind of like finer points. But particularly in relation to domestic policy, he has two key things that he brings up. So Kennedy Jr. with Rogan today said that with the end of the Cold War, the promise was that US defense budget was going to go from 600 billion to 200 billion, and that was going to be the so-called peace dividend. This is in like 1991, 1992. Okay. And that had never happened. And now when you put in all the black budget and all the NSA and CIA and DIA and all that kind of stuff, that the current budget in his appropriation was 1.3 trillion currently. So instead of being cut by 2/3, it had more than doubled. Okay. So I did the analysis. I was first out on British media with the analysis of his presidential announcement speech. And I said at the time, after he had said that, quote, US foreign policy has entirely collapsed. That was what he said in his announcement speech. Okay. Now he's pre-announcing this absolutely profound shift. And if he's being consistent with the promises of the past that included JFK in his speech, saying that the billions of dollars in 1963 terms that were being used to create nuclear weapons that would simply sit in a warehouse, either to never be used or to bring out the destruction of the planet, that money by all countries should instead be used to eradicate the lack of education and fight poverty and improve health. Okay, so really, really classic kind of like Democrat goals. So, I mean, I think that the speech that he's going to do on Tuesday is going to be absolutely groundbreaking. He's literally trying to turn the clock back 60 years and take us to the point where Kennedy was advocating for total global disarmament. Okay, but obviously the big problem that we've got now is now that Merkel and Hollande and Poroshenko and Zelensky have all admitted that the Minsk II Accord was a complete fabrication and fraud, that was simply a time-buying scheme to allow NATO to train and equip the Ukrainian armed forces. It's very hard to see how, as Professor Mishheimer has explained, how there's any even residue of trust that the Russians would consider entering into any kind of agreement at all.
Well, and who's going to believe? I mean, look at the allies we screwed over too. The Kurds, for one. I mean, who's going to believe us on anything?
Yeah, no. I mean, obviously, you've got the Kurds, you've got the South Vietnamese, and
Right.
you've got the Afghans. But isn't it astonishing that when you actually go into the nitty-gritty of the speech, and I'll send Hobbs the link to it, and the link that I'm sending actually has the transcript attached, so that's really helpful as well because it's quite a windy day. But the Russians and the Chinese, through their Greater Eurasian Partnership in the new era, which, as Kennedy explains without using that exact term, which is the correct terminology, but simply saying how China is using the power of the purse in terms of aid and investment rather than military might, that is pretty much all that America has been using for the last 20 years. You know, certainly since 9/11, it's kind of with us or against us, or we'll kind of like drop a load of bombs on you.
Right.
And so even though he essentially wants to revert and complete the unfinished business of his uncle and his father, this is essentially exactly what the new policy of the Chinese is, and what's being so incredibly effective with all of the African Union, ASEAN, Mercosur, BRICS, SCO, C5, all these other Arab League, all these other small groups are all buying into the Chinese deal, which is what they call win. It's the Saudis, for example, last week with Blinken, specifically rejected the American realist concept of a zero-sum game in international relations. He told this to Blinken's face in English at a press conference, right? And he said, you know, we're embracing the Chinese model, which is everyone does business and everyone makes money. And there's no cultural aspect for the Chinese version. So, you can be pro-gay or anti-gay, whatever you want. It's just about feeding our population and making money.
How backwards are we at right now where the American model is the zero-sum game approach and the Chinese model is the free market, open business, everybody does what they want as long as everybody's getting ahead?
Well, but this is the
How
whole
we have
point
fallen.
about the concentration of power in the military-industrial complex. And don't forget that Eisenhower's draft, which is available from his presidential archives, specifically said originally the military media industrial complex. But when his transcript was given to the three big TV stations, it was, obviously ABC, CBS, and NBC in 1960, right? They refused to give him airtime unless the word media was taken out of his speech about the complex. So it got changed from military media to military industrial.
We've wondered, when did the media become part of the military industrial complex? But the only thing we could come up with it, it's always been.
Well, that's the whole point. That was specifically what he was warning about in 1960, and they were censoring presidents even then.
Mm-hmm.
Yes, but how much longer do we have the internet for, though? Because now we've seen the Biden administration is coughing up $600 million to rejoin UNESCO on an emergency basis. And what are they worried about? The AI negotiations, because China was about to write the rules, and the UNESCO Internet for Trust version 3, the comment period for which ends on June the 27th. And once that's over, then they're going to roll out the minimum standards for national regulators to censor misinformation and disinformation. And what we're seeing in Ireland and in Canada looks like it's more and looks like it's unique, but it's because the global standard is the minimum standard.
Well,
and then on the 25th of August, we're going to have the Digital Services Act in the European Union come into place, and that's going to allow them to shut down Twitter for failing to regulate hate speech. I'm not joking. They've already threatened Thierry Breton, the Digital Services Commissioner for the European Union, that he's flat out threatened us that we're going to shut down Twitter Europe-wide.
So does anybody have any way to get around that with something like a VPN or anything like that?
Everyone will have to have an individual VPN. But if you look at the consequences of that in China or in Singapore or in Ireland, for that matter, you're facing 5 to 10 years in jail for using a VPN.
Oh man, it comes to the point where these people trying to enact these tyrannical restrictions on people's abilities to just speak freely and do what they want as long as they're not hurting anybody else in the strict sense of the word, don't hurt people and don't take their stuff. They have to realize that the reason that people are pushing back so hard is because they're squeezing so tight. This resistance isn't coming from a vacuum. It's not something that just sprung organically out of the ground for no reason whatsoever. If they would just loosen their grip and stop being assholes to everybody, they wouldn't need to enact things like this, because they're just putting layers and layers on top of each other, and pretty soon all of these weird internecine connected things that they're doing to try and to exert the control is starting to look like a Jenga tower, where you've got gaps and holes and things that are out of balance, and the whole thing's going to come down, and a lot of people are going to die. And
well, look, guys, I understand. I mean, I'm sharing your frustration because I've been rolled with InfoWars 3 times now, and so I was hoping to be able to get this kind of message out. Supposedly I'm rebooked for Saturday. I've been told now that's looking very unlikely. I got told that today, so I've no idea if this is going to happen, because if you've been listening with me with Harrison, I've been explaining with him that you've got the New World Order, which is the Western version, fighting against the Great Eurasian Partnership concept, right? And Z has specifically said that he now regards from this year onwards as the second great Chinese century. So I mean, there's just huge forces at work here, you know. And Alexander Dugin, the Russian philosopher, he's just put out a paper on the 1st of June that I enjoyed reading, and he was talking about in the West that they've gone from transhumanism to post-humanism, and his belief is that the Western elites want to hand the planet over to artificial intelligence and then depart on a spaceship to like Mars
Like, what, a
or
spaceship?
moon of Jupiter or wherever. Right? That's his idea, going from transhumanism to post-humanism. Now, funnily enough, when I was talking about human digital twins, and I did a special with Alex on the 9th of July, 2021, and I was saying, look, the end game here, as I saw it with 6G and DNA encoding for data storage, was that when they got devices into everybody, right, that they would be able to create a human digital twin for every single person and basically download every single aspect of that person and create a digital record of it, so much so that its future behavior could be predicted. And then whatever knowledge that it had, in terms of engineering or architecture or law or religion or whatever, you could simply use it as like an artificial intelligence source and deal with that, such that you wouldn't need the physical body anymore. And that would be too much of a carbon footprint to have all those people, when a digital image could be created for them. And this was actually done for the space program. This was how they were testing how all these spacecraft would perform without actually going into space. So they created what were called digital twins. Then they did it for bridges. Then they did it for huge tower buildings. So these like 100-story buildings, they're absolutely covered in sensors, so they can monitor the performance of the building. And that then creates a digital version of the structure. So you actually have something called the Digital Twin Corporation. And then for space, you have something called the Object Management Group. And those are like great rabbit holes for people to go down if they want to look at that. The Digital Twin Corporation and the Object Management Group. Now, have you seen how the Chinese, yesterday, they put up 41 satellites into space in one go? It's a record for the number of satellites to be launched in one go. And what they're actually doing is they're in a race with Musk. So he's trying to put up 12,500 satellites. They're saying they're going to put up 13,500 satellites. So they want a Chinese version of Starlink, so they can censor the download for the whole world. And they've actually said that they've got laser weapons in space and they're going to shoot his down.
Doesn't that violate the treaty that was signed on the Reagan administration about weaponization of space?
And their answer is, we know that the Americans and the Russians have got them up there, and we're going to blow the whistle on everyone.
Great. So we're up to
I'll let you guys go. I know we've already run
right
over
now.
But anyway, so on next week, just to give you a heads up, in case you want some feedback, or you can just simply watch it. You're probably going to do a show in like a week's time, right? I'm doing a midnight special, believe it or not, kind of like New York time, to cover the Kennedy speech, which is going to get broadcast into Australia. And then I'm probably going to be on with Harrison or Alex during the daytime. Then I'm going to be on UK radio in the afternoon. And then I'm doing a 2-hour show from 8 till 10 on Wednesday night. So, you can say this guy's a crackpot and we don't believe him or whatever, but at least 4 other media organizations, and I mean, these are big ones, right?
Yeah.
Do. And because, I did very, very detailed analysis quickly of the presidential announcement speech for Kennedy. I'm getting a kind of like a second shot with his foreign policy speech, which, I think we're at the point now where if people assume that Trump's like the shoo-in, because he's like 35% ahead or 40% ahead of DeSantis, right? That it's really incumbent upon a lot of Republicans to actually switch their registrations so that we can make it a kind of like Trump-Kennedy duel and hopefully really make some progress to restore the republic, because I think both of those are trying to do that. But the one thing that Kennedy's making the point of is he's been fighting government agencies for 40 years. He knows all the senior executive 1, 2, and 3 people. He knows all the GS-15s. He knows exactly the level of people that he needs to get rid of. And don't forget, it was Obama just before he left office and handed over to Trump who actually made it impossible to fire the senior executive service level 1, 2, and 3. So when Trump came in and wanted to clear all these Obama appointees out, he suddenly found that he couldn't, because they'd all kind of like had fixed term contracts negotiated. And exactly the same thing happened with the Joint Chiefs of Staff as well. That came to fixed term tenures. So he could roll those over and give people a renewal, but he couldn't fire them unless it was with calls and they were given like a court martial or something. That was why it was so hard for him to get rid of Milley. So, and it was also hard to get rid of Fauci and Birx and Redfield and all those other kind of people. Now, I'm sure he could have found a way, or he could have found calls if he really wanted to, but he didn't. Now, the other final thing that I'll give the audience so they can go search this as well. Are you guys familiar with Executive Order 13887?
No.
Okay, so just drop that down. Executive Order 13887, signed by Trump on the 19th of September, 2019. So when you now have people like Peter Navarro and Flynn and Stone all saying, Trump's not a scientist, he didn't understand the difference between the old style measles vaccine and the mRNA vaccines, that executive order is all about mRNA universal flu vaccines. He knew about the new technology. He signed that in September 2019. So if you have a read through that, it makes you realize that he's not an idiot who is misled by some of the 10,000 people the president gets to appoint. If he made some bad decisions like Bolton and Esper and Barr and Sessions and the other enormous list that we could run through for the next 3 or 4 hours, he better start working on that 10,000 person replacement list, right?
Right.
Because that's going to take 18 months if you're not going to end up with people like John Bolton in your administration again.
Well, I'll definitely be watching the RFK
definitely don't
speech,
want that.
so we'll probably be talking about that next week. So
okay, well maybe I'll talk with you then. But anyway, it's been a pleasure.
Yeah.
Thanks ever so much. I wish you all the best, and I hope the show gets plenty of viewers. I'll try and share it as much as I can. Okay.
Always good to talk to you, Simon. Of course, you'll your insights are always great to hear. You just I don't know when you sleep, but yeah, that'll about cut it for the show tonight. Went a little bit over an hour. Thanks for tuning in. This has been This Week in Clown World with Ben and Hobbs. We'll of course be back next Thursday to talk about all the stuff that Simon just laid out there with the RFK speech and whatever clowny nonsense comes our way in the coming week. Join us tomorrow for a Hobbservations episode. We're going to be bringing back our buddy Ed Black. He's recently published 2 books. One is a graphic novel, one of his web novels. He finally put it down onto paper, and the other one is a children's book. So we'll be talking to him about that and whatever else is on his mind tomorrow night. Other than that,
stay honky.